Your dog is asleep beside you right now, curled into a warm comma on the couch. You hear the soft click of nails against the floor, feel a wet nose press into your hand, and watch a tail begin wagging before you even say a word. To you, this animal is family. Now remove the couch, remove the walls, the kibble, the leash, and the veterinarian. Outside your firelight, the same basic animal weighs nearly 100 pounds, hunts in a pack, and can crush bone with its jaws. So the question is simple. Tens of thousands of years ago, with no cages, no breeding records, and no idea what a gene was, how did your ancestors turn wolves into dogs? The first surprise is that they probably did not begin by capturing an adult wolf and deciding to make it friendly. That sounds heroic, but it is also a fast way to lose a hand. The process likely began at the edge of camp. Your ancestors killed large animals, stripped away the best meat, cracked bones for marrow, and left behind scraps that still smelled like a feast. Most wolves stayed back because humans were loud, armed, unpredictable, and dangerous. But a few wolves were different. They were slightly less afraid. Those wolves could creep closer after dark, grab a tendon or chunk of skin, and escape before anyone threw a stone. The boldest animals ate more. The most aggressive ones got killed or chased away. Here is what nobody tells you. Before your ancestors selected wolves, the camp itself may have done the selecting. Human garbage created a new survival test, and the winners were not the strongest wolves. They were the wolves that could remain calm near you. You should picture this happening slowly. One winter becomes 10, 10 become 100. And each generation of camp-following wolves is born from parents that tolerated human voices, smoke, children, and sudden movement a little better. Genetic evidence shows that your dog did not descend from any modern wolf population. It came from an ancient wolf population that has not yet been found. And a 2022 study led by Anders Bergström found that the ancestors of dogs were still genetically connected to other wolves around 28,000 years ago. The split was a process, not a birthday. That matters because several famous early dogs may not have been dogs at all. Nuclear DNA later identified dog-like remains from Goyer in Belgium, Predmostmos, Mienest in and the Altai Mountains as members of extinct wolf populations. Think about that for a second. Nobody woke up beside a wolf and discovered a dog. The next problem was trust. A wolf that steals scraps is useful only until it bites a child, raids stored food, or attacks an injured hunter. Your ancestors needed animals that did more than tolerate humans. They needed animals that could read them. This is where accidental selection probably became personal. Your ancestors may have spared the calmest adults, shared food with the least threatening animals, or carried unusually curious pups back to camp. Those pups grew up hearing human speech, smelling human skin, and learning that a raised hand did not always mean violence. Not every experiment worked. Some animals fled. Some turned dangerous as they matured. Some were probably killed, and some may have returned to wild packs, carrying their new genes with them. But whenever a calmer animal survived and reproduced near camp, its temperament had a chance to become inherited. Your ancestors did not need to understand DNA. They only needed to notice which animals were safe enough to keep close. Here's the part nobody talks about. Early domestication was probably not a single human invention. It was thousands of tiny decisions made by wolves and humans at the same time. A wolf chose not to run. A human chose not to throw the spear. That was enough to begin. You can see the power of selecting behavior in a famous experiment that began in Siberia in 1959. Geneticist Dmitry Belayev and researcher Lyudmila Trut bred silver foxes based mainly on one trait: how calmly they reacted to humans. Within generations, some foxes began seeking attention, wagging their tails, and behaving far more like companion animals. The foxes were not proof of exactly how dogs formed, but they showed how quickly choosing for friendliness could reshape an animal's behavior, body, and development. First came tolerance, then came cooperation. Once your ancestors had canids that stayed near camp, the relationship stopped being charity. These animals brought abilities humans simply did not have. At night, your eyes become nearly useless beyond the fire. A wolf's nose can detect information carried on the wind long before you see anything, and its ears can catch movement in darkness. One growl could warn your entire camp that a rival, the group, a cave lion, or a strange wolf pack was approaching. That alarm had value. During a hunt, your ancestors could follow tracks, surround prey, and throw spears. But canids could chase, smell, and keep an animal moving. Even imperfect cooperation could increase the chance that meat came home, and the canids benefited too. They gained access to bones, warmth, protection from competing wolves, and a species that could kill prey much larger than either partner could safely handle alone. Here is what does not make sense until you think about it. Why would hungry hunter-gatherers feed another predator? Because the predator could help create more food than it consumed. The newest ancient DNA evidence makes this partnership feel less like a guess. In 2026, researchers identified a genetically confirmed dog from Pinardibes in central Turpania that lived about 15,800 years ago, plus another dog from Gough's Cave in Britain around 14,300 years ago. Those dogs were separated by more than 3,000 kilometers, yet their genomes were remarkably similar. By then, dogs were not a weird local experiment. They were spreading between different groups of hunter-gatherers across Western Eurasia. The same study found that dogs associated with three culturally and genetically distinct human populations shared closely related ancestry, suggesting your ancestors exchanged, carried, or passed dogs between communities. At Pinar Bizai, chemical traces preserved in bones suggest the dogs ate food connected to freshwater fish found in human-occupied layers. That means your ancestors were likely feeding them directly or allowing them to live from human leftovers. The wolf at the edge of camp had entered the human food system, but food alone does not create a best friend. The deeper transformation happened when your ancestors began treating these animals as social partners. Dogs became unusually skilled at watching your face, following your gestures, and searching your eyes for information. You do this with your dog constantly. You point toward a door, your dog looks, you change your voice by half a note, and your dog knows whether you are inviting play or ending it. Wolves can learn some human signals with intense socialization, but dogs arrive unusually prepared to pay attention to you. Selection did not merely create a tamer wolf. It created an animal whose survival depended on understanding another species. And somehow, your body answered back. In 2015, Miho Nagasawa and colleagues at Azabu University in Japan found that prolonged gazing between dogs and their owners raised oxytocin in both. That is a bonding chemical involved in attachment. And the same feedback loop did not appear in the human-raised wolves they tested. Here is the strange part. Your ancestors may have selected dogs for useful behavior, but the bond eventually reached below conscious choice. Dogs learned how to trigger care. Humans learned how to feel it. The clearest ancient evidence is not a hunting scene or a pile of bones. It is a sick puppy. Around 14,200 years ago at Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, your ancestors buried a young dog with a man and a woman. The puppy was only about 27 or 28 weeks old, and damage in its teeth suggests it suffered repeated bouts of a disease, similar to canine distemper, beginning around 19 weeks. Without help, it probably would have died quickly. Someone kept it warm, someone gave it water, someone cleaned it when it was sick, even though it could not hunt and guard or repay the effort. A 2018 analysis by veterinarian and archaeologist Luke Janssens concluded that the puppy's survival for weeks was unlikely without intensive human care. Your ancestors spent precious calories and time keeping alive an animal that had no practical value in that moment. That is not just domestication. That is attachment. Then the partnership kept changing both sides. When some of your ancestors became farmers, dogs followed them into a new food world filled with grain, porridge, and starchy waste. A 2016 study of ancient dog DNA found extra copies of the starch-digesting gene AMY2B appearing in some European dogs from farming settings by roughly 7,000 years ago. In plain English, dogs began adapting to eat more like you. Their bodies followed your kitchens. Their genes followed your migrations. Their lives followed your rules. But do not imagine pugs, dachshunds, or golden retrievers running beside Ice Age hunters. Those early dogs probably still looked much closer to wolves, with long legs, powerful jaws, thick coats, and enormous variation from one group to another. The first creation was not a breed, it was a relationship. Only much later did your descendants push selection towards specialized bodies, dogs built to herd, guard, pull sleds, track scent, fit into small homes, or simply make a human smile. The raw material was already there because your ancestors had spent thousands of years selecting for attention, cooperation, and trust. So, how did ancient humans actually create dogs? They faced distance, an answer with shared scraps. They faced danger, an answer by favoring calm animals. They faced darkness and gained an alarm system with ears and a nose. They faced hunger and formed a hunting partnership. They faced loneliness and loss and discovered that another species could become family. But your ancestors did not shape wolves alone. The wolves that approached camp shaped humans too. They changed how your ancestors hunted, guarded children, traveled, shared food, and understood the boundary between wild animal and loved companion. That is the bigger story. Domestication sounds like conquest, as if humans stood above nature and redesigned it. What really happened was quieter and more humbling. Two frightened social predators met at the edge of a fire, tested each other for thousands of years, and slowly became safer together. Now return to your living room. Your dog lifts its head when you move, watches your eyes, and thumps its tail against the floor. The room is warm. The food bowl is full. Outside, there are no wolves circling the dark. But inside, that simple glance is a decision, first made, beside an ice age. Fire. You did not create the dog alone. The dog helped create you.